Hi, it's Tony here. Welcome to this module in Power Automate Basics that's called Seasoning the Alphabet Soup. In the technology industry, we are always coming up with new acronyms, lovely acronyms. Look at this slide and you see things like RPA, DPA, there's an AI in there. We talk about UI automation and APIs and things like that. And sometimes it can be a bit of an alphabet soup for people. And it's true that Power Automate has RPA built in, it has DPA built in, and sometimes that's hard for people to, just to clarify. I think sometimes we need to clarify what these terms mean. So if that's you, if you are lost in this alphabet soup, then this is the module for you. What I'm going to cover is API, DPA, and RPA. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. And DPA stands for Digital Process Automation, and in Power Automate, that's known as cloud flows. And RPA stands for Robotic Process Automation, and that's known as desktop flows in Power Automate. And understanding the differences between these things and what they are is key, so I'm going to go through these and unpack them a little bit more. Let's start with API. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. So in this context, application simply means a program or a service. So this might be Dropbox, it might be Outlook, it might be Google Drive, it might be Twitter, Facebook. It's just a program or a service. And programming here relates to the code, the language for developers. An interface is just a way to work with the app. So in this context, it's how developers talk with the program, how it talks with the application. Now APIs, not all applications have APIs, or more accurately, some applications have APIs, but they're terrible. So ideally you want to automate with using APIs, but not all applications have APIs. Let's just talk a little bit more about why APIs exist. This is a service called NetDocuments, where partners to NetDocuments, and they have a web interface to access. It's a document management system, and they have a web interface to access documents through that web interface. Now, if there was no API, here's what would have to happen at a very general level. Let's just say that the NetDocuments application is a database and a bunch of documents. It's not like this. If anyone from NetDocuments is watching, I know this is not like this, but let's just pretend it is. Then this is how that web application would get a document. If I wanted to open a document, this is what would have to happen. It would have to query the database to make sure I'm authenticated. It would have to am I allowed access to that document? If so, go to the file location, check the file is valid, initiate the transfer of the document, check out the document, write a history item, etc. All of these different actions need to be written inside that web application, which, apart from being a lot of code to manage, it is also a hacker's delight. So what an API does is it takes all of that stuff that needs to happen and wraps it into one particular thing called a call or a method. And the getDocument method, the getDocument call here, the API call getDocument, just needs a document ID. You pass it a document ID of the document that you want, and all of that stuff that was in the background, the authentication, all of that is handled by the API, and all that the application gets is the document. A bit more complex than that, but essentially that's what an API does. It has these particular calls that need things sending to it, and then you get a response back. So in this instance, getDocument is document ID, and then you get a document back. Once you have these APIs, it's then easy for developers to then create other applications that might need access to documents. So long as they behave in the same way, use the same rules of the API, you just send a getDocument, document ID, and you get the document back. So you can build these extra applications on top of that service, which is why you see additional products that integrate with Dropbox and that sort of thing. For us in Power Automate land, that's really good because it means that vendors can make connectors for Power Automate, and NetDocuments has a connector that leverages the NetDocuments API. Even if the vendor doesn't create a connector, then there is an independent publisher program where people in the community can create a connector. So long as that application has an API, it is possible to create a connector for it. So that's really exciting when it comes to things like creating these these integrations and flows. So that's API. Now, APIs are key when we talk about DPA, which are cloud flows. So DPA, Digital Process Automation. This is a digital, so it's platform, usually in the cloud. Process, in this instance, just sequences that humans would do. And automation in this instance is using APIs via connectors. So in the NetDocuments instance, you would create a cloud flow that could be looking for documents, searching for documents, then doing something with them. So automation here is using APIs via connectors. So DPA is simply API to APIs process automation in the cloud. So what about RPA then? What's the difference between RPA and DPA? So RPA, or known as desktop flows, stands for Robotic Process Automation. Now in this instance, robotic meaning mimic like a human, sequences that a human does, same thing. But this time the automation is automating the mouse clicks and the keyboard clacks of a human. It's automating the machine, automating the user interface that the human would use. So in this case, RPA is process automation. It's on a computer, it's not in the cloud. It's on a computer, it needs a computer that interacts with the desktop user interface like a human would. So sometimes you might hear the term UI automation or user interface automation, and they're simply referring to a particular style of RPA. So to summarize then, APIs are Application Programming Interface. It stands for Application Programming Interface. And in Power Automate land, this is connectors. We're talking about connectors that leverage APIs. DPA, Digital Process Automation, these are cloud flows that use these connectors. Cloud flows using connectors. And RPA is mimicking a human like a robot does, Robotic Process Automation, and these are desktop flows. These are desktop flows. And what is key here is that cloud flows are for modern systems that have these APIs, and desktop flows are for old apps that don't have APIs, or they might have really complex APIs, or the API doesn't do a particular thing that you need to do. APIs have capabilities. Sometimes you might need to do a certain piece of a workflow in using RPA and desktop flows. The beauty of this system, and why I like it above all the other ones, is that you can do what you can in the cloud using APIs. API is more resilient, and we have a module on that later on in the course. Cloud flows are more resilient, so you do what you can in the cloud, and then only reach out to the desktop when you absolutely need to. And Power Automate bridges that gap between on-premise and cloud, and between API capability and non-API capability. All of this stuff together. So this is a slide, you'll recognize this slide from a previous module, and hopefully it makes more sense now. Cloud flows, APIs to APIs, desktop mimic a human. Hopefully that distinction is quite clear. And all of this is known as intelligent automation. So you might hear that it's not used as often nowadays, but IA was a term for a while, and IA, not to be confused with AI, AI is artificial intelligence, IA is intelligent automation. Hopefully that has seasoned that alphabet soup for you. And if you have any comments, questions or feedback, please do talk to the support bot, and we will chat to you. Catch you later.